on, guys. Take responsibility. Many protesters are goons. That's a legit concern right there. And Pole Sana about your shop being looted. I can see Felix Keter saying if religious leaders would have done enough, then this country maybe would have been in a better position with no violence and other unnecessary voices. I think that's what he was trying to say. Pan-African nationalist says the law is absolutely necessary. I think he's referring to that public order amendment bill. Otherwise, Kenya is moving towards anarchy and chaos, while the commercial activists continue minting cash. Let me look at another comment. One more. Sorry for the delay. Morwani says if the police were to provide security to the protesters instead of using tear gas on them, it would be much easier to identify and isolate the goons. I recall that at one point, Gen Z were even willing to apprehend the goons themselves and hand them over to the police. We appreciate your comment right there. Papicado says the police are heavily present from roads leading to the CBD to the streets themselves. I don't understand how goons looted and destroyed property at downtown when the Kamkunji police station is a stone throw away distance. They must explain they barred protesters from reaching the CBD. Those are some of the comments we've seen on the chat. Feel free to continue chiming in. That's to our listeners. But let me pose this question to some of our speakers, and perhaps Nerima Wako and Keoti Sonko, you guys can take this up, because at the onset of this Gen Z protest, there were a couple of demands listed by the protesters, and we've had them time and time again revolving around accountability, austerity measures, good governance, and all that. And this year's protest push for justice for Ojwang. What does this justice look like? Is it the monetary compensation we've seen the family receiving? Is it the process in the corridors of justice where some of these police officers have been in the dock time and time again, including the OCS for Central Police Station? And as we answer that, we need to find out the root cause of this protest and whether the government has truly shaken off that tag of being tone deaf. Are they listening to the people? If we look at some of the concessions that were made by President William Ruto in 2024, last year, after the protests, has the government walked the talk? I guess that's a big question in terms of the full implementation of NADCO report. I guess that's work in progress. Some bills are still in Parliament. Have we seen the right to peaceably assembly and protest being upheld? This some of the issues that were canvassed by the Gen Z protesters. Withdrawal of the finance bill by the president, despite the supplementary budgets that followed thereafter. Did we truly see austerity measures touching on the budgets to the budget allocations to the offices of, let's say, the First Lady, the spouse of the Prime Cabinet Secretary? Those were some of the concessions made. Did the president walk the talk? Nerima, we could start with you, perhaps in terms of. Okay, Oti Songo, I can see you already unmuted. So protest, what's the value? At the end of the day, did the government, is it a listening government or is it tone deaf in terms of some of the concessions they made? Yeah, talk to us about it.
Okay. First of all, I want to take you back to last year when we were protesting against the finance bill. The finance bill, of course, it was withdrawn, but I still feel like it wasn't withdrawn fully because in the supplementary budget we still had things which we were against coming back, so it wasn't. But remember, the president, when actually we addressed him on this platform, this very platform on the Express, he promised us that he's going to ensure that he cuts the cost of his advisors and, of course, reduce his advisors. Last year, when we were protesting, the president had 7 advisors. But today, as we speak, he's having over 20 advisors. One of them being the nephew to the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, the son to the youth leader Oburu Odinga. So we find out that this government we are having, it's not a listening government. It's a government that tries to talk to you, but at the end of it all, they show you a middle finger, if I may say. Uh, we had students actually demonstrating against the new funding model. But today, as we speak, the new funding model is in place. We have hundreds of thousands of the students in the universities and colleges dropping out. Some of them are deferring their studies because they, they don't have enough funds to cater for their education. And the president promised that he's going to ensure that he sits down with them to see the better way they can come into consensus and see how they are going to be helped. He tried. Of course, he had that the town hall there at KICC, but still nothing changed as we speak today. On matters abduction, the president actually promised that we are no longer going to talk about abductions because it's going to end such abduction. And remember, even Justin Buturi, he clearly told us that when you abducted, you went to the White House, and the president made a report, and he signed it. But today, as we speak, we have a lot of young people who are missing because they've been abducted. Darwin is not here, is Derek, and we don't know where he is today. So, a little government, if I might say, because all of what the he has never adhered to. And that's why we are equally telling him that no matter he abducts us, no matter he intimidates us, we are not going to stop to criticize him. We are not going to stop to call out names because that is the only way they can listen to us. And we are still not going to stop protesting because that's the only language that this government listens to. So what we need now, we don't need any explanation from the government. Let them just pack and go. They need to pack and go. And if they're not going to pack and go, then we are going to ensure that we send them back home because they have proven beyond reasonable doubts that they are not able to lead this nation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to,
Naveen,
yeah.
perhaps before you, as you add your voice to that, the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, just the other day assured Kenyans that the government is ready to listen and that they will tackle the issues raised by the youth. I mean, this is 1 year later. Should we trust that they have goodwill for that?
Yeah, exactly. So it's 1 year later, and justice looks like investigations and prosecutions. We are not seeing that. What we've been witnessing is cover up, accountability in terms of independent oversight bodies. So when you hear Indiki talking about now, they are ready to listen to their families, they are ready to act. It's late. So even the redress, when we're talking about compensation, it's compensation to victims' families. But right now we're talking about those who have passed on. There are members who are now, without limbs. There are people who their lives have changed. There are people who are still in and out of the hospital. That causes physical, emotional, financial harm. And there's nothing in regards to even public apologies. There's nothing even regards to access to mental health care. So it's a lot of things because we've also had, CS Murkomen talk about institutional reform, talking about adding CCTV cameras, as if that's going to change anything. They talk about reform of police training, but they are not talking about abolishing these rogue units that no one seems to know where they come from, who they belong to. what we're seeing is, torture becoming an everyday thing, excessive force, people being picked up at night and then they're telling you, oh, that person has not been abducted. Just say they've been arrested. So why do you come so abruptly to arrest someone? Why are you coming as a surprise? Just come, tell someone to come if you want to investigate and question. Why are you picking them up as if you're abducting them, and then you gaslight the public and tell the public there's no abductions that's happening? And we haven't even seen anything around the protection of whistleblowers. If anything, if there was any goodwill, it would be those who have reports, share them with IPOA. We would be happy that this independent institution can follow through with regular public reporting. But that's not what we're seeing. So I would say that it's, again, a lot of talk trying to calm down the population, but we haven't seen anything around even community-led policing models in terms of even rebuilding trust. We haven't seen anything around restorative justice processes in terms of, when victims seek reconciliation or public healing. There's nothing like that. So it's very, easy for us to say that there's no goodwill. And clearly their intentions are not to solve the issue that's at hand. It's just to minimize the uproar and to hope that Kenyans will soon forget and hope on to the next thing.
Nerima, you've talked about the issue of IPOA, and I believe the chair, Isaac Hassan, said that police officers are not collaborating with investigations, stonewalling its efforts to oversight police conduct in general. Let's not forget the issue of the fact that they're understaffed and the budget is not enough. Do you think they're being set up for failure?
There's definitely structured not to be able to work. So yes. And even I believe it's Okayo who was mentioning how even when you approach the office, there's no trust with even not even having people having the access to you in terms of supporting you. The office looks dead from the entrance. So why would the public have trust that such an institution is going to resolve a matter or a case? So there is no goodwill to support independent institutions, even beyond IPOA. What we're even witnessing is the capture of parliament. We've already seen that. Now they are grappling with capturing the judiciary, and we're concerned about IBC. At the end of the day, Kenyans will be asking, what institution remains? What remains as an independent constitution or institution that can stand and represent the Kenyan people? Our answer would be none. They all belong to the executive. They are managed and manipulated from State House. And that is a concern and that is a worry.
Okay, thanks, Nerima. Wakili Steve. Okay, he seems to have dropped off, but we'll continue with the conversation once he joins. Reverend Walter, I'd like to engage you just briefly. Hope we'll be able to hear you clearly this time round. Because at the end of the day, the church is the salt of the earth, But there's a section of Kenyans who take issue with the fact that the pulpit is being used time and time again for political rhetoric, despite countless bans in some denominations. How can the church redeem its image, number one? And equally, there's a notion that some of this youth are being used by politicians. How do we emphasize on morality in the context of mass action and protests?
I hope I'll be heard this time. I hope I'm a bit clear.
Clear, sir.
Yeah, thank you. That, just matter of technology. I hope it works. Now, the church has invited politicians, but remember, politicians are just members like any other member of the society. When they come to church, they may get an opportunity to speak. The only thing that happens is that sometimes they misuse that opportunity they are given. So I'm strongly to say that they don't need to give politicians opportunities. But some circumstances allow this to happen. So what do? We need to make a standard declaration as a church that everybody is equal. Like in my church, we believe that all of us are equal. We don't have special places for politicians and any other person. So when you come to church, you come to worship and you go. And if there is anything that you need to address, then we are guided on how we need to address that. If you are supposed to make a speech, then you are supposed to make a speech that is not political, but that goes with what we are discussing about. Although human beings are not easy to control, so you may allow somebody to speak, and when they get the microphone, they are carried. So maybe what we can do as a church or religious groups is to stand with what the bishop of the Anglican said, that a church is a holy place where people should come for worship, politics to be done outside. But remember, again, there is a problem that follows where we have raised the politicians to be very high in the society. And we believe that they have solutions to some of these problems. But the major thing is for us to make a stand as religious leaders and say that this is our position, of which in some of our organizations it has worked, some it has not worked. On the issue of morality, morality comes from very far because it begins with the family. It comes up even to the church where we emphasize on matters of morality. But remember, going to the streets is not immoral because the Constitution has allowed people to go to the streets to demonstrate and do whatever that is supposed to. What brings the difference is what happens there, because we say that the good come in and they do very bad things. Now, those who go in the street and they go with a good reason and they want to do what they want to do, they may want to do it well. But interference from outside, and some of these people who are interfering are being used by the politicians. So if a politician gives you 1,000 shillings to go and do something not good, it is your responsibility to say no. I know there's a problem of poverty, but we can say no. I saw one of the young boys who was in town, and he was beaten. 1,000 shillings that he was given could not help him. He remains alone. The politician is in the house watching, and you are suffering alone. So the young people should have principles and say no to the misuse. If you are misused, you suffer alone. So we should emphasize that the young people should know what they stand for. They should know their position. They should know their value. Your value is not 1,000 shillings. Your value is not 5,000 shillings. And remember, that money will not help you to go and fight your fellow youth because you are being sent by a politician. It is not good. So young people should know their value and stand with their value and understand that their life is personal. You are not living for any other person. If you are going to the street because your conscience has sent you and you are only carrying a flag, your phone, and some other things, it is okay. But if you are being sent to be misused, then you are supposed to say, no, this is not the right way. You go and you go with sticks and other things, and you suffer alone there when politicians are enjoying their lives. So it is up to the young people to know their position. They should know their values and stand with what is right. And that is what will help them. And our church will continue standing and saying the truth because that is what we are called to do. Thank you very much.
All right, Reverend, thanks for that. We could hear you way better than last time. Asante, we just want to open up the conversation briefly in terms of our listeners who might have a burning issue, question, suggestion, any way to add value to this particular conversation. We've just seen Limenique K, who has been invited to speak. So, Limenique, if you can hear me, this is your opportunity. And I'd kindly urge us to use parliamentary decorum since this is an open platform. Limenique.
Thank you. My point goes directly to. It's a good question, by the way. You are asking for the deaths and looting during protests. Who carries the burden? In my opinion, it's rather a hard question because number one, we've seen for ourselves, even when you follow on social media and TV, the kind of mobilization that takes place for the protesters to arrive at their protest place is not hard for the authorities to easily control or rather provide security on those protest sites. The problem usually happens when there is that altercation between the police and the protesters. I don't want to get into who started it, who initiates it, or who pokes the eyes of the other. We might get lost in that. The problem is the intent of either person. Like if you are going to protest and you feel that your point is not being heard, the point of protest in the first place is disruptive. It's meant to bring some sort of halt to normal daily routine so that you get the attention of whoever you are trying to talk to. So in this case, if Gen Z feel that they are not being heard, the authorities need to feel their presence. So they need to disrupt their daily routine. In this case, that's now what the Constitution anticipated, some form of disruption. So when it gets ugly into distraction, for the last protest, this is something I noticed. It's my personal opinion. It's easy to mobilize people to come to the protest sites, but even this goes to the media people. Have we ever tried to follow the protesters when they are going back to wherever they come from? Because there is a lot of gray area in that space. No one really goes. I saw a huge crowd in town, but how did they get home at the end of the protest? Does anyone really know how these people get home? There's a lot of hurting. There's a lot of destruction, and there is blame game, and I don't want to get into that because we might talk till Jesus come as to who is responsible. This one is denying. This one is alleging. So as to who is really to blame, it's more of a moral issue rather than even a legal issue. If you just we need just to be honest with ourselves. If we want to really bring order, we have to be honest with our intentions. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your contribution. Definitely raising a serious question. If it's a moral issue or legal issue, I think the lawyers in the group will delve deeper into that. But even as we continue with this, we can see yet another speaker who's requested, a listener who's requested to speak. His handle is Tribeless. So Tribeless, quote unquote, if you can hear me, feel free to chime into the conversation. You have the mic.
Thank you very much, seniors. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. On demos, I think we need to be checking on every aspects that brings about all these deaths, lootings, and chaos which we normally see. Like into the case of the 25th of last month, it is typically, and everybody knows that protesters were peaceful, but the government through police brought about chaos, which in turn became chaotic, and the lootings and whatsoever we saw. I heard police spokesperson, Mr. Wino, saying that going into demonstrations.
Former police spokesperson.
Hello? Are you getting?
I was just saying it's the former police spokesperson, yes.
Former police spokesperson. I heard him saying in the morning that when you are going to demonstration with your hands, that doesn't mean that you are not violent, that hands of human being are part of weapons, that you can get somebody hit with your hands, you can squeeze somebody's head, that when you are going to demonstration, you should leave your hands at home. I was not understanding that statement, but I came to understand that every official of government is defending police. And in Kenyan demonstrations, as they have been, as they are, and as they will be, if government through police, they cannot be independent, if they can't come to demonstration to at least see some order and some easiness in the demonstrations, if they will be picking sides now and then the streets will be chaotic always. And I think that the way we are moving on with the demonstrations, every Kenyan has enlightened himself. and all of us now knows our rights. So nobody will come tell you that you are doing the wrong thing when you know you are doing the right thing. Secondly, I wanted to talk about police recruitment. We don't need to just going and recruiting failures, academic dwarfs. We give them weapons. At times, we need to get to people who can be security officials, people who have knowledge of life and humanity. With me, I just think in Kenyan demonstrations, as much as everything is concerned, it is government through the police that triggers deaths, lootings through goons and whatsoever we normally see. I rate my case.
All right, thank you for that contribution. I equally have seen someone else requesting to speak. Mizani 254, over to you.
Yes, good evening. And my name is Eli from Mizani 254. And I thank you for setting up this conversation. And I've been following keenly because of some of the submissions that have been made by the Wakili. The first thing actually I love to mention is framing is very important. When we frame a conversation that is public, for example, we are going for the demos, the moment we call them protests, the whole conversation changes. And that's why possibly the police now find it okay to shoot down Kenyans who are peaceful, and we call them demonstrators. So the first thing we need to address is how are we framing this conversation? Number two, we have had enough talk about goons. I would like to categorize the goons in 4 groups. That is number one, I'm looking at the police. In my view, and that's my strong opinion, they have become goons rather than peacekeepers. Number two, I am seeing the political players who recruit what I will say force and, in this case, a militia-like team to protect their interest. Number three, I am looking now at the state because it's almost gone rogue. Because if you see the stature of an individual such as Murkomen telling the police officers, you have our blessing to shoot, and until your ammunition is out, you continue shooting and run only when it runs out. And if by any chance you're brought to court, we will not comply. What does that tell you? It tells and speaks a lot about the issue you're trying to address on the disorder that comes with the issue of demonstrations. And last but not least, I am looking at the general population. When we talk about anarchy, it's when the rule of law refuses to stops being important to all of us simply because we want to imply or employ what we will call as mob justice mentality. It will be difficult for me, Sophie, Aisha, to come here and say I want to be defended with the government, that I am seeing it protecting those in my view who are working with clubs and rungus and hitting me, and then claim that I'm the one who is not peaceful. So if we are going to address the issue of having demonstrations that are orderly, we are not going to look at the public act. We are going to look at where it all begins, and that is from the state, the police, and the political players. The last person in this chain is actually the population that is trying to make their voices heard. So until we address those aspects of the hierarchy of goons, we will be here next year and trying to see and say it has happened in the past. So we keep comparing bad manners and say, well, this time round, they're behaving better than the previous one. And we excuse it, and it becomes how we operate as a society. Last but not least, if the police are supposed to provide security during demos, what business do they have to get summoned to actually go out there and shoot to kill? I'm assuming they need to provide security and escort the demonstrators rather than teach a camp and wait until the escalation happens. And the first thing they want to do is lob tear gas and shoot live bullets at demonstrators. I submit. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Let me just go through some of your comments on the chat. The Kenya Current says, drain the swamp, power lies in parliament, smoke bad MPs out, and Kenya changes. We have Morani who says if the police were to provide security to the protesters instead of using tear gas on them, it would be much easier to identify and isolate the goons. I recall that at one point, Gen Z was even willing to apprehend the goons themselves and hand them over to the police. Maybe Marvin, coming to you. I mean, we keep on saying drain the swamp, which is a good thing. But when we look at the future, perhaps, how do we really identify the right person? From a youth perspective, what qualities would you want the future leaders of Kenya to have? Marvin, KOT Sonko, can you hear me?
Yes, hey, I can hear you. Kindly just pardon the question.
Yes, I'm saying that we keep on saying we need to drain the swamp. Even as we do that, we need to identify the right qualities in leaders. From a youth perspective, what is the right qualities for our leaders, even as we think of the future?
Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, we've been saying we want to drain the swamp, and most of the people are saying we really need to drain the swamp. They are not doing it as we speak. But we have a good team of the young people and the likes of Fatima Shakira and Nyamisa. We have been on the ground, of course, to do civic education to ensure that we pass information from these digital spaces to the ground. So as we speak, we are trying to ensure that we identify good leaders. And so, coming to your question, the qualities of a good leader. Number one, a good leader is a leader who values humanity, yeah? A leader with integrity, a leader who listens to the people, because we want people-centric leaders. We don't want these leaders, dictatorial leaders. And so, as we speak in the political arena, I can tell you for free that these old politicians, the old, the what do we call them? The people who have been there from time immemorial, they have proven with the reasonable doubt that they don't have those qualities. And so currently we are looking up to people who values about the constitution, and we're having the Chief Justice Maraga, the Emeritus, and of course Okio Mtata as we speak, because we are looking at them, whatever they're trying to do, how they have been trying to engage with the people, how they defend the constitution, and how they express themselves to the public. If we are going to have leaders of that caliber, and then we would have found the right leaders that we are demanding as we speak. And so the good leaders, as I've said, the ones who listen to the people, those who put them down to ensure that they are advised, they are shown the way, and of course, they also seek to the people what the people want, or rather, what the people need. And so, on the presidential election coming, next election, you'll find out that you already have the leaders for that. So what we are doing as the young people now, we are going to the ground to nurture young leaders who can occupy the parliamentary positions. That is the National Assembly, the Senate, and even the county assemblies. So our civic engagement, the political engagement rallies we are doing, we are going to ensure that if we have an executive who has integrity and he values about humanity and he knows what needs to be done as a president. Then also in the parliamentary side, we also have young leaders who have the same values and the same vision to ensure that we put our country on the global map as we have been demanding. So, according to me, we only have a few leaders whom we believe they are visionary. And I've already mentioned their names. We are going to ensure that we fight so hard to ensure that they occupy those positions, so that we can also test good leadership and good governance. And as I wind up, I want to call upon the young people. who believe in themselves, who believe that they can be changed and they can bring about change in our nation, to come out and declare for political positions. Because if we only protest and we are not providing a political solution, then after the next general election, then we'll still be here trying to say who and who must go, because they haven't proven that they can be leaders who can listen to the people and they can deliver in accordance to the constitution and in accordance with what they promise to the people. So thank you so much, and I've been happy to be part of the panelists on this platform.
Okay, KOT Sonko, don't go yet, though. We're still continuing. But thanks for your submissions right there. Nerima, I'd like your take on this, so that we avoid a culture of tokenism and what is it, a lack of accountability in instances where human rights violations are violated or human rights are violated during protests, especially through police excesses. How best to go about the compensation of victims of police brutality? As far as back as 2023, 2024, this year, equally, because we had the CS Interior while visiting CBD downtown. He said the government doesn't have any budget to compensate businesses that have been looted during protests. Yet, at the back of our mind, we still remember one of the 10 points for the MOU between UDA and ODM sort of was on the right to peacefully assemble and protest, which included compensation of victims of past violations. I think we need structures around this. I don't know what you think, because we've seen in the case of Albert Ojwang, the government came through, Raila Odinga came through, the governor came through. There's a house being constructed. I think they had a burial ceremony at the church today in remembrance of the life that was lost. But on the flip side, Boniface Karaoke, apart from the bills being waived, the family is still crying foul, even as they seek justice in the corridors of justice. So, how do we structure compensation for victims of police excesses during protests or extrajudicial killings?
That's actually the petition that the mothers, that was led by Rex Masai's mother, were wanting to submit to Parliament. And they wanted to submit it to the Speaker specifically to, have a parliamentary inquiry in terms of holding not just the people accountable of who killed her son, but also creating a framework for compensation. Some of the conversations that we had in Bunge was, how far back do we go? Because even when you're talking about compensation of people who've lost their lives because of protests, it goes beyond, you talk about 2023, it goes even beyond that. And I remember even there was a time, Millie, she was like, how far back do we go? And these are some of the things that I'm proud of the moment that we're in now, where people are refusing to remain silent and to move on. The whole thing of remembering those who were lost last year, the reciting of the names and the numbers, even though we don't have the exact figures, is extremely important, because we've seen in our history, once there's a political alignment, once there's a handshake, once there's an MOU, building bridges, they have all sorts of names. We forget about the victims and we forget about the families. And then we find ourselves in the same situation where people are pushing for a more responsive government. So I believe that this is the generation that is sticking to it, and I hope that they continue to do so, because you begin to question, how is Kenya on the front runner to sit on the Human Rights Council when in her own country we are seeing human rights being violated? These are the questions that are coming out. Remember, we're also speaking about a moment where UN is rethinking in terms of moving, and they want to change their headquarters. And Nairobi is one of the cities that is in the front runner for that. And so can you really host UN offices and have the UN headquarters in a country that's blatantly violating human rights. So these frameworks must exist before some of these things occur. And unfortunately, we have seen government caring about what the West thinks, the East thinks, because it's also a funding pool for them. And we know that we are one of the first countries when it comes to ratifying certain policies and issues because we want to be in the good books of everybody. And it's because it allows us to go back and ask for more money from these particular countries. So I believe that we are also living in an interesting period where we have this constitution where it's supposed to be able to protect the citizen. And young people are questioning whether we are being guarded by the rule of law or do we have a government that's leading by the rule by law. And I feel it's such an important moment because even when you talk about, these are things that used to happen during the Moi era, when you're talking about abductions, torture, and you can't even talk about family compensations in that period. There are members who just disappeared, and you never hear of them again. And it was a norm. But for that to becoming a reality and a normalization with the 2010 constitution is something that we must continue to push back on. Otherwise, what was the point? What was the point of pushing to have this constitution if it can't protect us from rogue regimes that are usually utilizing their instruments of power to threaten and intimidate? So I believe that if Parliament was to do what it's meant to do, that is to represent the people, they should have already come up with a framework as to what compensation looks like. And we would have to go back in our history, in our files, to also compensate victims that have often been forgotten and to include the ones that are more recent and unfortunately, hopefully, not others that are coming along the way if it continues in this trajectory.
All right, thanks, Nerima. And it's good to know that it was part of the petition the mothers were seeking to take to Parliament and present it to the Speaker. We definitely hope for a structured engagement around compensation. So what's good for Peter is good for Paul, Anyway, I can see one more listener wants to give their take. Perhaps you can listen from Bivon Ngoge. If you can hear me, the mic is yours. Kindly take over. Bevon Ngoge, if you can hear me. Okay, I can see a thumbs down. He's all good to go, I guess. Okay, let's continue with the conversation. Ngoge is not ready to speak as of now, but we can still see the chat box is quite full and we'll be sampling them in just but a few. But at the end of the day, we have to find out if the government is addressing the root cause of this protest, even as we ask who exactly carries the burden. At the end of the day, I don't know what our listeners think. Do you feel a semblance of a listening government, that they're not just sitting back and watching, but they're not just cracking down on dissent, but they're like, this youth are raising serious questions, and perhaps we need to show that we're willing to actualize on some of these demands. Reverend Walter, I don't know what your take is on this. Is the government addressing the root cause of the protest, or are they simply cracking down on dissent? Because if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're bound to repeat it. So to end that cycle of wrongs time and time again, we need some action. Is the action there, Reverend?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think what I have discovered is that our government is reactionary. It is reactionary in a way that last year they promised so many things and they agreed to do so many things, like the reshuffle of the cabinet. Unfortunately, after that, they brought back the same people in the cabinet. So I don't think they are listening to act. Number two, they promised to reduce their advisors to the president. But every time they keep on increasing and increasing and increasing. You look at what is happening in different areas. They are just doing a reactionary way of dealing with the issues. So what I could advise is that if the government could listen, after listening, they do what they have promised, instead of being reactionary and blaming. You know, when a government starts blaming, then it shows that it has failed in the idea. So like when the minister stands and starts blaming another person, now politicians are blaming each other. And the government is blaming some politicians, which means they are not doing the action as it is supposed to be. It is supposed to, the government is supposed to give guidance. They are supposed to listen and follow what these people are saying. Because I don't think all the demos or what all the young people are saying is wrong. It may be that it needs some time for implementation. Why can't the government give them a roadmap that we shall do this and this and this? What people want is assurance. People want to be assured that the things that are being raised can be handled and can be tackled in this and this way. Remember, the government has the machinery. It has all that it takes to make things what they want it to be. But if they keep on blaming and they keep on pushing blame to this person and this person, then we are failing. So my advice would be each and every cabinet secretary should take what the people are saying seriously, and then those who are advising the president should advise him accordingly, so that we have order, we have a government that is acting on the things they have promised. You cannot promise so much things and you are not doing it. Why can't you promise little things that you can do? Why can't you reduce what you can reduce? Because there are some cabinet secretaries who don't even have much they are doing. We can reduce that and the money that we are getting that to use to pay the debts that we have, listen to the young people, the issue of unemployment, how do we get jobs? How can we help these young people to get jobs? How can we help them to venture into businesses? How can we assure them of their security? How can we assure them of their peace? How can we assure them that what we are doing is right? Something like killing people. You know, when people are going to the streets on 25th, they were going to look at, to commemorate what had happened last year. It is unfortunate that the government that was supposed to listen, now we have had 19 people dying this year, which means the number of deaths is increasing. Why couldn't they have found another way of dealing with the demonstrators, even with the army? So we should be able to understand, the government should be able to come up with ways of understanding, listening, acting, and doing what is right. That is my take. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Reverend, for that. Let me just go through some of the comments that we're seeing. Eli, we're getting to you in a bit. Dennis Njiru says the only genuine protest was last year, June. We no longer have protests nowadays, just anarchy and politics. Nabibia says, our voices are never heard until we go to the streets. Why? Well, that is the question all of us are asking, Nabibia. We have DT Mwaniki who says the demos are legal from citizens who are frustrated by the lack of good governance, and unfortunately, the government doesn't have amicable solutions and is retaliating with gunshots and supporting actions of hooliganism. Namibia equally says, another comment, the government of KK was not ready to lead this nation. They should agree that because they were not sure of winning the 2022 elections, they got leadership without any plan. Perhaps we can hear from Mizani 254 now before we continue.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And pardon me for the previous submission. I was actually trying to drive off the freeway. On the question you're asking on compensation, I'm happy that we're discussing it. And I don't know the contents that are in the document that the mothers were going to present to the Speaker of the National Assembly. But Nerima, what I'm looking at, and if I have to refer, if you go to the Office of the Attorney General website, there's a section that talks about the Victim Protection Board. And this is under the Section 31 of the Victim Protection Act of 2014. And the Act provides for compensation, which now takes effect from that is Article 59 of the Constitution. When you look at who qualifies, you'll be startled to look at what in this case is who qualifies rather. It says a court must give an order of compensation after the accused is found guilty before the Victim Protection Board can compensate. Now, assuming and looking at how the tall order of our courts is, the process within which the justice system in our country runs, and it can go for years and years, what happens to the family of these people or individuals who are affected? Until this becomes a very national outcry, that is when a few political figures decide, okay, fine, we're going to offer a few millions here and there just to try and calm down the issues. And therefore, in my view, if some of the petition or some of the content of this petition should be looking at will be at what time or who, when the qualification of a victim of police brutality, for example, is proved at the level of IPOA, they should be able to recommend as the case proceeds for compensation to happen. That is the initial compensation. That is number one. Number two, I'm also disturbed when, and I think Ashi, again, if you look at your tapes back in the studio room, at the newsroom, you'll be able to find a place where the president addressed the nation and specifically addressed victims of the 2024 brutality that happened on the 25th of June. And in that tape, the president goes ahead to state that everyone that was affected in terms of a victim of that process, they will be compensated. Their families will be compensated. And I hope I paraphrased that correct. But that said, just after the demonstrations of the 25th of June, the head of state also issued a statement calling the people that were involved in those demos as anarchists, possibly what would be looked at as a clear coup of the political will of Kenyans. So how do we turn around from calling the young demonstrators as demonstrators to anarchists, and finally, they deserve compensation? So that leaves a laguna in between, and it looks to me more of a political statement rather than a listening ear. So when you talk about us listening or the government listening and trying to change its ways on how governance is approached in this country, I refer you to the bill that was coming to Parliament by then Member of Parliament Ruku, who suggested a few ways on how demonstrations will have to happen and what have you. And it fell at the committee level. I'm happy we actually contributed to that. But that said, today we are talking about another bill that is suggesting to adjust something through the Public Order Act. So simply put, we listen, we become reactive like Reverend has said, and then instead of addressing the issue, we actually find an alternative way to insulate ourselves against the issues that are being raised. So in a nutshell, unfortunately, we have come to the place that we must agree that the leaders that we have today have decided to distance themselves from the reality of the people they are leading. And maybe it's time we went to a discussion table and understand and have a conversation and a dialogue on how better we want to be led as a nation. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Eli. Now, Nerima, I've just seen you raise your hand, or is it 100? But perhaps even as we try and wrap things up on this discussion, maybe you can talk to us about the fact that on Monday is Saba Saba. We're already seeing that there are calls for protest or demos, if you like. And we're in an era where, of course, the government is going to retaliate. Abductions are more common. Police are killing those that they swore to protect. And it's a pattern that is likely to continue. And there is fear among the youth. For those who perhaps would want to join the fight, but are afraid, what word of advice would you give them?
I think, yeah, I was saying 100%. I agree completely. But I was, that's a tough question for me because, and let me not lie, I've not even been thinking of Saba Saba because we've had comrades arrested. They're on cash bail, 200,000 each. Released today. There are still a few who are currently going through court cases like, Wanjikutiga. We still have some where we do not know where they are. So it's been really hard to focus because it's been feeling like managing fires every single day as soon as you wake up. But I would tell people to find their way to protest. I saw a tweet that Adele did a few hours ago, and Adele Onyango was just talking about find your own method of protesting. It doesn't all have to be the same way, and sticking to it. I'm not gonna tell people all of you end up on the streets, because even it's a risk. The fact that even there were so many women that were raped, it's a very scary thing. But I would say deplatforming these politicians is removing their power. We have to go back to where they no longer have audacity, because what we're seeing is them speaking with so much arrogance once again. To be able to see someone publicly say in a media interview that the things that were being pushed for to be removed in the finance bill last year, we found a way to sneak them in anyway. That sort of statement just shows you there's no sense of care, regard, responsibility. And I think occupying churches was such a powerful movement to begin with. We need to go back there, because politicians use these platforms, unfortunately, and they abuse these platforms to campaign and spew hate, and to also misinform the public. I think it needs to go back to where they're afraid of addressing the public, because the public is demanding answers from them, and they want to see more action from them. So find your way to protest every day in the way that you feel that you're adding value, is what I would say.
Nerima, before we let you go, sorry, I have to ask about this question because the court stopped the Communication Authority dead on its tracks following orders to media houses banning live coverage of protests. And Kenyans rightly asked if the cameras aren't rolling during protests, case in point, let's say Saba Saba, will there be transparency and accountability and justice? Do live broadcasts escalate unrest during protests? Or does that move account to censorship as media houses claim? Or was it responsible regulation as justified by the Communication Authority? It's an ongoing case, but give us your take briefly, Nerima.
It's censorship, because we also witnessed the shadow banning of certain hashtags. It got to a point where you're posting and you're not able to see the hashtag, because when the media now went on a slowdown, people were trying to record with their phones on other platforms, and because of certain hashtags you couldn't be able to. So we know that they pushed that because they wanted to minimize how much was on record, the visibility, and this was also giving the police room to do what they needed to do without having to account for what they're doing. And a typical example is what happened at Quickmart OTC. Like, if it was okay and free flowing, why not just have the media in there? Why surround it so much? Why not want the eye of the media present? We should be concerned when things want to be done in darkness. So media, I'm glad that they defied some of those orders. I think that we should continue to push back on some of these outrageous statements.
Okay, asante sana. Let's hear from the other speakers, even as we conclude. Reverend Walter, I'd like your take on the mutual trust between the National Police Service and the members of the public, which is dwindling. How do we restore that trust between members of the public and the law enforcement officers, just to ensure police are truly committed to safeguarding lawful demonstrations and bringing perpetrators to justice? It's proper to give credit where it's due. Some officers didn't receive kindly the shoot on sight orders by the Interior CS, who belabored on clarifying what he said, but that's a story for another day. So tell us, this mutual trust, how do we gain it back?
Thank you very much. Before we had a police force, and now in the new constitution, we tried and called it a police service, where we expected them to have that way of good relationship with the people. Some of them have tried, and I want to appreciate some of the officers who are talking to the demonstrators, who are escorting them, like what happened in Meru, what happened in Mombasa. We can recommend them. But there are few who still have that behavior of using force. So what I can encourage is that we create a rapport, that police officers are our brothers, they're our sisters. We create a relationship with them just from our homes, from our roads, everywhere. They should know that they are serving the people. They are not here to fight the citizens, but they are there to protect and to guide and even to take care of these people. Because by the end of the day, we know they are being paid by the taxpayers' money. And remember, some of the issues that are being raised by the people, they are affecting even the police officers. So all of us are being affected by these issues. So it is up to us to encourage the police officers and even those who are ahead of them to help them, their leaders, help them know that they are in this service to serve the citizens. They are not there to fight the citizens. You only arrest if somebody has done something wrong, and they should arrest the people with respect and with that way of humility. The misuse of guns is personal, because when you are arrested alone for the misuse of your gun. It is not that the whole officers or even your boss will be arrested. It is you alone. So they are supposed to take personal responsibility to show respect and to show that they are there because of the people they are guarding and the people they are protecting. We can have a way of the police officers, the way the protesters, the demonstrators will show them where they will follow. We can have a way of those demonstrators gathering somewhere, and then they are escorted where they take their petitions. After that, they can retreat after a specific time. Say if the demos will take 4 hours or 6 hours, then following the route, they can be guided that people to assemble at this particular time, then they are directed under protection to where they're supposed to go, and then the police officers can now release them to go wherever they are going. Because I know, as the protesters were coming out and as they are going to the street, at one point they come in a good way. But when you go to where, to a point where you see a razor been put somewhere, you see the vehicles that are on the street, they are scary. And when they scare these people, somebody feels not they are under attack. So what happens is that they try to act fast. In the way of acting, then the police will think now there's war. And in some cases, you can see the demonstrators are so humble, like the boy who was shot selling a mask. Although I had the former spokesman of police say that he used an abusive language, but that boy was just standing because he knew I'm selling this mask and nothing will happen to me. But the police officer came and went to a point of shooting him just because he said something. That is wrong. So we need professionalism. Maybe they can be retrained. They be told how to mingle with the people. I'm happy because today they live with us. Because before they were living in the camp, but now they live with us. So we should embrace one another, work as brothers and sisters, and encourage mutual relationship, just from the higher officers to the lower officers, and even the people as our citizens. We should not fear the police. We should see them as our brothers and sisters. I think it needs more of education, more of training, and more of having some, even playing together. When we have free time, we can have a relationship where the people and the police can have a time to just talk and discuss these matters together. I think that will be helpful. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Reverend. Wise words. Asante sana for that. Kyoti Sonko, I hope you're still there. As you give us your final comment, we'd just like to hear from you because we're anticipating Saba Saba protests on July 7th. And from the last protest, we heard what the government said. It was more of anarchy than, peaceful protest. How do we avoid such a scenario where protests start peacefully, but are infiltrated by well-organized criminal networks with, a deliberate agenda to incite chaos and destruction of property across the country? What stops a goon from carrying a Kenyan flag and looting once under the guise of darkness? So these are some of the questions perhaps we need to evaluate even as we push for our right to peacefully protest. So Keoti Sonko, your final take?
Okay. First and foremost, a goon will find it very easy to loot if he's looting and the police officer in official uniform is standing there watching. And that is what happened in the last protest. That was along Luthuli Street, Luthuli Avenue, and Tomboya Street, because I was there and I saw. The goons are looting, police officers are standing there watching. But then they are meeting peaceful protesters with the tear gas and excess forces. Some are being shot. They are not goons. So we find out that for us to curb that issue of infiltration and goons coming on the streets, then let the police officers do what is supposed to be done. What is supposed to be done by the police officers in the protest is to guard the peaceful protesters and to maintain law and order. Whereby, if someone who doesn't resemble the peaceful protesters comes and infiltrates the protest, then that person should be held accountable. He or she must be arrested and then be presented to the court of law to face full law of justice. And so, moving forward, what we need to do is we need to ensure that we even guard ourselves. And that happened in the second protest, whereby we had to counterattack the goons in the protests because the police officers were siding with them. So it's up to the National Police Service, the DCI, and the government of Kenya to let us know whether the police officers are also goons or they're meant to protect the peaceful protesters. We saw what happened in Eldoret on 25th. A lot of goons on the streets carrying mipini za jembe, and they were being escorted by the police officers. They are attacking who? They are attacking the peaceful protesters. I do like what happened in Mombasa, because in Mombasa, there is nobody who organized the goons. And that's why the protests in Mombasa, they were so peaceful. The protesters in Mombasa, they marched across the streets all the way from Pembes and Ndovu to Saba Saba, carrying the flags and the placards without interfering with anyone on the streets. And so the protests were very peaceful. But if I may ask, if the goons came and infiltrated that protest in Mombasa, would it have been a peaceful protest? No. So moving forward, the police officers, they must ensure that they refrain from being used by this rogue regime to protect their interest. We as the people, we do love our police officers because they give us the security, but it's so unfortunate that some of them, if not most of them, they are being used. They are being used by the political class. They are being used by Kasongo himself. They are being used by Eliud Lagat, wherever he is today. And so they come into the protests. They don't think beyond humanity. They only think about what they're being promised. And so they're doing what they're doing. As we speak, we have a lot of people now lying in the mortuary. Some of them are deep down beneath the earth because of the police brutality. So what we need to do is the police service, they need to realize that they are no longer a force, they are a service. And they need to ensure that they provide service to the citizens of this country. We as protesters personally have always been in protest. And if Saba Saba is going to be there, 100% sure I'll be there, because that's the only way I can raise my voice that the government can listen to. So they need to know that we are not fools, we are not innocents. We see what happens. So let us maintain peace when we are protesting, because we have always wanted that. If 5,000 people were on the streets and nobody countered them with tear gas and rubber bullets, then everything will be peaceful. So as I drop off, ladies on the platform, on the panel, they are really requesting that they need to have some airtime to air out their grievances on this platform. Wanasema wameona tu Nerima peke yake jamani, tusikuwe na hiyo, tukuwe na gender disparity. So back to you, the host.
All right.
Challenge accepted.
Thank you so much, Marvin, for your contribution. Even as we try wind up, Limenik, I don't know if you have any last words, but I know Tribeless had raised his hand. So Tribeless, we can hear from you.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much again. As I had stated earlier, it is clear and it is in public domain that the deaths, the lootings, and everything that normally happen, finally, they normally happen from a point of view that they are coordinated and organized by the government through police. This is because when we are going into a peaceful demonstration, as we are now organizing for the Saba Saba, somebody somewhere is now busy recruiting police on how to shoot and kill. So when we are beyond the demonstrations, how can you trust a police officer who had gotten something 2,000 shillings to shoot and kill somebody? It is not fair. So what I'll be telling my fellow Kenyans on the Saba Saba, let us just come out in large numbers and let us not fear the bullet. Because at the end of the day, hakuna mtu alizaliwa hapa duniani atabaki. All of us, you will die. Some of us dies when sleeping on the beds. So let the police know that we will be going out for demonstrations that day, and we will be going for our peaceful demonstration. When we mean peaceful demonstration, we only have a bottle of water, a flag, Kenyan flag, and a mobile phone, perhaps with data. So we don't have any other thing. So whoever is coordinating or organizing the police to come and provide security, let him also tell police to abide to the code and conduct of the police. Let police not think that they are employees of a certain politician within the state. There is no police officer who is employed to be a worker or an employer of an individual politician, be it the president, the deputy president. And it is high time that we may check on the leadership capability of the police, starting from the IG to the DIG to huyu mwongo who takes an oath and lies to the Senate and lies to the National Assembly. So these are the leaders who are leading us. And I know some of them, some of their spies and the DCS are here in this platform. Let these things into your minds. You are human beings. You came into your mother's wombs. You never write an application that you are coming to Kenya to be a security officer either in the DCR or in the police. You gotten that privilege to be in security department to provide security for all Kenyans. There is what you swear, and I tell you, the blood of the Kenyans that you have killed and that the one you are planning to kill, they will only rest on your doors. We are fearless, we are tribeless, we are leaderless, and we need peaceful demonstration, and we need police to be accountable, and we need everybody everywhere to know that liberation is a process. It is a process that no one with no might can defend. Just let me rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Tribeless. Limenik, I'll let you have the final say.
Okay, thank you. So my final say is as we prepare for the Saba Saba protests, demonstrations, or whatsoever, if they will be there, I know it won't be among the last protests we'll have. I'm sure we'll have future protests of some sort. So the police was once a force, and we are trying to get them to be police service. I'm afraid it will take time, but that's not my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that transformation of police from a force to a service is going to claim more lives. That's the sad reality. Thank you.
All right, asanteni sana. Well, Limelek seems to point to the fact that we've changed from force to service on paper, but in terms of the services by the police, they're still forceful with it. Anyway, asanteni sana. I hope this has been of value to all our listeners. We definitely appreciate your support, whether you were silent, whether you uliweza kuchangia kwenye chat, ama equally given the mic to speak. I hope more of these discussions can, come forth with forthcoming resolutions in terms of how to move on as a country, and perhaps think of this as you doing your due diligence in terms of public participation. So we definitely appreciate your participation right here, right, Ashley?
Definitely. And of course, just to let you know that we'll be holding this space every Wednesday, same time from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Well, equally, if you want to be a speaker, you can always reach out to our Standard Digital page, DM us, and of course, we'll consider you. And let's all learn together. After all, Kenya ni home, right?
Exactly.
Well, be safe. Have a good evening. We'll see you next week, same place, same time.